Survival has always been our most essential drive. Though we may pride ourselves on independence, our strength has always been in connection. In the earliest days of humanity, we gathered around fires, shared food, built shelter, and stood watch for danger together. It wasn't just our bodies that evolved, it was our ability to form bonds and to lean on each other when the world grew cold and dark. Even now, that instinct remains. In the face of crisis, we rally. In moments of fear or fragility, we reach out. And sometimes, survival isn't just about strength or resilience. It's about trust in our bodies, in our will to endure, and in the quiet but powerful truth that someone, somewhere, will show up when it matters most. There are stories that remind us of this. Stories of people who find themselves isolated in the harshest of conditions, and yet persevere because of the human spirit, but also because of the human bond. This is Watch Her Cook. Hello, everyone. I'm Cassie.
And I'm Danielle.
Welcome back to Watch Her Cook, a podcast dedicated to sharing the incredible lives of women who have taken their power back throughout history.
I loved your introduction today because it's super timely. I subscribed to a Substack for one of my favorite authors, Nora McInerney. And every week she puts out just a small Substack piece of writing about various topics. And this one, she was writing about how we are losing our sense of human connection for convenience and how, everything is becoming automated, from driverless cars to self-checkout to just kind of removing people from everyday interactions, and how that's starting to affect people, and how a lot of doctors are now starting to prescribe group activities as a form of just making you feel better for your mental health and being around people.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize that was, I've heard of community support groups, but a prescription to hang out with people I've not heard of before.
Yeah, and she was talking a lot about how, AI is starting to take the place of therapy, like going for therapy, and you're talking to artificial intelligence, and just the red flags that is raising, and how we're losing our human connection and our, since we've been around, just relying on people for things is just so important, and how we're starting to lose that and how detrimental that's starting to become.
Mm-hmm.
So that introduction was just really timely for me.
And I think it makes a really good point too, of how much there is something about human connection, but and having friendships and bonds and stuff, but there's a point in everyone's lives where you actually really do have to rely on your relationships with other people, whether it's your friends or your parents or your partner, whatever it is. And it's nice to highlight the value in that sometimes.
And today we're going to be talking about a woman who was quite independent and did a lot of things for herself, but at a point in time in her life, she really needed her community, and her community showed up for her. Today, we are talking about Dr. Jerri Nielsen. She was a doctor, a mother, and a woman searching for something more when she accepted a job that would change both her life and captivate the world. In 1998, she became the sole physician stationed at the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, one of the most remote and unforgiving environments on Earth. What began as a bold personal journey quickly turned into a gripping medical emergency, and she was forced to begin treatment while completely isolated from the outside world. Her courage, optimism, and resilience became a global symbol for human determination in the face of impossible odds.
Dr. Jerri Nielsen was born as Jerri Lynn Cahill on March 1st, 1952 in Salem, Ohio. Though her family did not have the means to travel, Jerri grew up in a household that encouraged adventure. From a young age in her rural town, Jerri dreamed of crossing the prairie, going to Africa, or even to the moon. She studied pre-med at Ohio University in Athens before enrolling in the Medical College of Ohio, where she graduated with a medical degree. While studying, she met her husband, Jerri Nielsen, who she had 3 children with. Though she was drawn to emergency medicine, she switched to family medicine to spend more time at home.
Jerri and Jay's marriage, by her account, was tumultuous and abusive. Though he never physically hurt her, Jerri described her husband as manipulative and terrifying, someone who shattered her confidence, psychologically tormented her, and instilled fear in their children. In one harrowing incident, she recalls how he strangled and shot the family dog in front of her and their daughter.
Oh my, that's awful. That's horrific.
Yeah, that's the peak of
Abuse.
That's certainly a form of torture, not only for that, obviously, the animal, but for witnesses. And it was clearly intentionally
To
done
hurt them.
to
Yeah.
inflict harm. But Jerri stayed, saying, quote, "If someone with my profile walked into the ER, I would have spotted her immediately. But I could not see her in the mirror. It wasn't until she witnessed her husband physically hurting their sons that she fled with the children."
You know, it's so easy to see someone else and see their situation, be like, you shouldn't be in it. But when it's you, yourself, in it, it's so much harder to see it because it's so much more involved, especially when you have children together. So with that being said, she did eventually return and their relationship did continue after that. After Jerri had a brief affair, Jay agreed to a divorce. However, while she worked full-time to rebuild her life, Jay turned her children against her and ultimately gained custody of all three of them. By the time the divorce was finalized, Jerri felt like she had lost it all. She moved back in with her parents and her life became routine. She was searching for a purpose at this point. Little did she know that that was all about to change.
Long gone are the days of waiting to be seen in a doctor's office only to have that awkward conversation with your healthcare provider. WISP gives you access to sexual and reproductive healthcare from the comfort of your home. Get treatment for BV, yeast infections, UTIs, and much more delivered directly to your home or ready for pickup at your local pharmacy in less than 3 hours. The best part? WISP is discreet, convenient, and you don't need medical insurance to receive care or prescription medication. Visit us today at hellowisp.com.
This message is brought to you by Abercrombie Kids, where the activewear is made for every summer activity, so your mini-me can bring their personal best. Summer days are always an adventure, from day camp to rec leagues and pool days. Abercrombie Kids has the shorts, tees, and swim to keep them comfy and keep up with them. Get everything for the entire summer at Abercrombie Kids. Shop in-store, online, or in the app.
In 1998, Jerri stumbled across an ad by the National Science Foundation. They were looking for a physician to join a research team in the South Pole at the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, a research facility that supports scientific studies in astronomy, climate, glaciology, biology, and ecology. Its unique, untouched conditions and location made it ideal for collecting data on climate change and cosmic patterns. Jerri described the feeling of reading the ad, saying, quote, "I felt a prickling sensation up and down my skin, like the kind of physical excitement a child feels at the sight of a bicycle under the Christmas tree. I believe in geographic cures. They allow you to throw all your cards into the air and see where they land, then pick them back up and deal them again." It was decided this job was meant to be.
How I relate to that entire quote so much. Not only for what it says, but also for the location that she's talking about.
Yeah, you and Antarctica are like,
We're tight.
you're tight. But I've never heard it put as "I believe in geographic cures," because I too believe in geographic
Same.
cures. I just never heard it put that way. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And it just gives you an opportunity for a fresh start, to start anew, to open a new chapter and maybe close a previous one. And it can be a remedy for a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
And to see this presented at this point in her life, especially, I mean, I can totally understand that prickling sensation of like, okay, this is exciting.
Yeah. She was seeing her purpose for the first time in a while, and she was seeing that in Antarctica. And like you said, with the geographic cures, travel is something that's very fulfilling and healing and opens your eyes to a whole new world. And Antarctica, I can imagine, because I also know that the idea of going to Antarctica is just so exciting, because we did a trip actually really recently, about a month ago. We were both in Antarctica, and it was to this day, it's been 4 weeks, the best trip of my life. And I think about it all the time. So let's learn a little bit more about the South Pole and Antarctica because it is absolutely fabulous. Located in Antarctica, the South Pole is the southernmost point on Earth. Even though the ground at the South Pole lies just about 100 meters above sea level, it's buried beneath an ice sheet that's approximately 9,000 feet thick. This thick layer of ice significantly raises the elevation, making the South Pole much colder than the North Pole, which is located in the middle of the Arctic Ocean. According to National Geographic, the coldest temperature ever recorded at the South Pole is negative 117 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 82.8 degrees Celsius. Due to these harsh conditions, planes cannot land at the site for approximately 8 months of the year. Additionally, if we look at the Earth's rotation, the South Pole only experiences one sunrise at September equinox and one sunset at March equinox every year. This means that the pole experiences up to 24 hours of sunlight in the summer and 24 hours of darkness in the winter.
So for a lot of people, that would have been a no.
I love the sunlight.
Not for me.
The sunlight part, great. The darkness, not so much.
I don't know. I think that would mess with me. For such a long-term position, like, yeah, if you're going to visit for a week, you can deal with it. But I feel like 24 hours of sunlight would be hard for me to adjust to. And not only the sunlight and darkness, that aside, what did you just say? Negative?
That's small.
What was it? 100
yeah, there's
and
that
something?
Small detail.
That small
but
detail.
It's also negative 170 degrees Fahrenheit. May or may not be including wind chill.
Well, for Jerri, this was perfect. As the only physician at the station, Jerri would be required to do everything from brain surgery to cleaning to filling in as a dentist if needed, based on a 5-week crash course.
Brain surgery to giving you a filling. Okay.
What can't she do?
Yeah.
She accepted the job offer and arrived at the station in November of 1998, shortly before the start of the dark and frigid winter season. A cluster of orange buildings, called Dome Sweet Dome, as the police would say. The last drop-off for supplies took place in February, and the team braced themselves for a long winter ahead.
Out of the 41 people who were working at the base, only 9 of them were women, but this was not always the case in history of polar exploration. Until the mid-20th century, women were excluded from Antarctic expeditions, not because of lack of interest or ability, but due to patriarchal beliefs about gender roles and so-called physical limitations. Antarctic exploration was seen as a men's place to conquer, remote, dangerous, and unsuitable for women.
The U.S. Navy, which was instrumental in the logistics and operations of polar research, were particularly influential in enforcing this gender exclusion. In the 1940s, the Navy implemented a ban, a policy, not a law, on women participating in Antarctic expeditions. Military and scientific leaders, including Rear Admiral George J. Dufek, who commanded the Navy's Antarctic operations during Operation Deep Freeze, argued that women would be a quote-unquote distraction and lacked the physical or emotional endurance needed to handle the continent's harsh conditions. He reduced the need for women, saying, quote, "Women will not be allowed in the Antarctic until we can provide one woman for every man." This deeply misogynistic viewpoint was widespread among military and scientific authorities at the time.
What is that? Provide a woman for each man?
I don't understand that.
I don't understand that.
Really?
Like provide it sounds like provide a shirt for each man. Like every man gets a shirt, every man gets a woman because a woman's present. That makes no sense to me.
I think it might be alluding to they need a chaperone. Like every woman needs a man to accompany them to make sure they're okay.
Yeah. I was reading it different where it was like, if there's only one woman, then what about all the other men?
What about them?
Right. That's the question. Why?
We have questions, Rear Admiral. We'd like to speak to you really quickly.
It's like, we don't like that at all, sir. The National Science Foundation and the United States Antarctic Program echoed these concerns, making the excuse that it would be unfeasible for women to join due to logistical challenges such as the lack of facilities for both men and women. Despite these barriers, women expressed interest in polar exploration long before formal participation was allowed. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, there are accounts of women aboard ships navigating Antarctic waters, often as companions to ship captains. However, it wasn't until 1935 that Caroline Mikkelsen, the wife of a Norwegian whaling captain, became the first woman known to set foot on Antarctic land. A brief but symbolic feat for women.
In 1947, Jenny Darlington and Jackie Roney became the first two women to spend a year on the continent. While groundbreaking, this was still an exception. The U.S. Navy maintained a ban on women in Antarctica until 1969. This same year, a team of American female scientists, led by geochemist Dr. Lois Jones, conducted research in Antarctica and became the first all-female scientific team to reach the South Pole. Their success marked a turning point in the history of polar exploration for women. Since then, women have steadily increased their presence in Antarctica, playing important roles as scientists, expedition leaders, and engineers.
I love how much women are spending their time in Antarctica now. And one of my favorite little trinkets that I brought back from our trip to Antarctica was I bought a patch that said Women in Antarctica, and it was a pink patch, and it was designed by an expedition guide who works in Antarctica, who was also a woman. So I thought it was really cool.
I had no idea about any of this history before our trip to Antarctica. And we have talked about this before with some of our listeners on National Park After Dark, but during our trip, we were obviously on a boat for a very long time. And for some of that time, we were in different presentations that expedition leaders would present on the glaciology of the continent, to the climate and mammals, to early exploration. And there was one presentation in particular given by an expedition leader named Ellie about this, about women in Antarctica and the history of their participation or lack thereof since, the beginning of people coming down to the continent. And it was one of the most profound lectures I've ever been a part of, because I just never really thought of it before. And to know that it wasn't until the late 60s that women were permitted there by the US. Australia, for example, came later as well, because obviously different countries operate under different laws and regulations and things down on the continent. But I couldn't believe that for most of history, women were allowed, but on the ships. They could take one of the most dangerous treks across some of the most dangerous oceans to get to Antarctica. But once they were in the waters within reach of the continent, they had to stay on the ship while their husbands or the men of the crew could get off and do what they needed to do. But they had to stay put.
Yeah, which is really crazy to think. But also, I think throughout history, there's, of course, been a lot of things that women have not been included in. But to look at Antarctica and think that women were not included in visiting an entire continent, that is, every continent has women, So to look at Antarctica and be like, no, women cannot be on this continent is really, really wild to think about.
I also think it's a little strange how they repeatedly would point to their mental and physiological conditions or barriers and assigning reason to that. It's like, well, this is the reason because they are not physically capable of something like that. Women arguably undergo one of, if not the most physically demanding things in life, and that's childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. And every day, multiple, like over and over and over.
Millions of women have done it.
So to say that women can't handle something because it might be tough is kind of an insult.
For sure. There's a lot of layers of insults in these policies. Well, anyway, going back into Jerri's story, she is a woman who makes her way to Antarctica and she gets this position.
However, as she got settled, things took a terrifying turn. Jerri found a lump under her right breast. At first, she thought it might be benign. This was something she had experienced before, and therefore she chose to keep it to herself. but the lump grew to 5.5 centimeters, and she started having back and breast pain.
She confided in a trusted colleague and began quietly preparing for the worst. She reorganized the medical clinic, creating labeled supply kits and highlighting key sections in medical text to guide others in case she became too ill to work. She also wrote short guides on handling various medical emergencies. At the same time, she discreetly began training a few people on the crew to perform essential medical tasks, such as operating the X-ray machine and administering IVs, under the guise that she just needed extra help, not revealing the true reason behind her trainings.
Eventually, Jerri confided in the station manager, who suggested that she email the doctor in charge of Antarctic medical stations, Dr. Gerald Katz. Jerri laid it on the line for him, saying, quote, "What I am asking is tough. You know the ice. Should I sit on this for 5 more months, or should I perform an operation on myself and remove it?"
Wow.
The consensus was that she shouldn't attempt to operate on herself, which made sense considering the complications of doing surgery in such extreme conditions. Instead, he advised her to perform a fine needle aspiration of the mass to determine whether there was fluid inside. If there was clear fluid, it would indicate a benign cyst. Cloudy or no fluid would suggest a cancerous tumor.
Knowing that she was willing and bringing the idea forward to do a surgery on herself is really, I think that paints Jerri as a person very well. Like, she is willing to go through very far lengths to take care of herself and others, of course, as a doctor. But I just thought, even to ask that question, hey, should I perform this surgery on myself? It was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But with the fine needle aspiration, she recruited Walt, a welder who had also trained as an Army medic, to assist with the procedure. Unfortunately, when she tried to extract fluid from the mass, it was solid, indicating that it was likely cancerous, but this was inconclusive. Shortly after, Jerri received an email from Dr. Kathy Miller, a medical oncologist at Indiana University. She advised Jerri to perform a core needle biopsy for a more definitive diagnosis.
To execute this, they required more medical supplies. So, in July of 1999, the National Science Foundation decided to send out a transport plane. This was a risky operation, and because of the extreme cold temperatures, it was too dangerous for an aircraft to attempt a landing. Jerri questioned if it was worth the risk for everyone involved, worried that even if she did get the supplies, her chance of survival would be low if she wasn't able to remove the lump in its entirety.
But her story had hit headlines, and people were determined to help Jerri. 2 planes, one carrying 6 bundles of medical supplies, fresh food, and mail, and the other following for in-flight fueling, headed from New Zealand towards the station. The staff at the station set fire to 27 smudge pots arranged in a semicircle to mark the drop zone. With the heavy snow, it took the aircrew 25 minutes to locate the markers, but the drop was successful. Everything landed safely, other than an ultrasound machine which cracked on impact. Jerri received the drugs, biopsy tools, and other crucial medical equipment necessary to move forward with her treatment.
Walt assisted again with a second biopsy alongside Bill Johnson, a carpentry foreman. They practiced the operation by puncturing a needle into fruit and a raw chicken breast.
I do not want to know that about my doctors if I need.
I mean, they're not doctors.
They're also not doctors, but they're like, yeah, I can do this. Let me just practice on a chicken breast real quick.
I don't know. Have you seen the things that, like, so Cassie and I were vet techs for a really long time, and we worked with a lot of different veterinarians. And I remember that, that like squishy material, I'm sure there's a very fancy term for it, but it's essentially skin that they can practice different suture ties with.
Yes, and it felt very real.
It's creepily real. Looked and felt like that. So
okay, but that wasn't a chicken breast.
Okay, well, they're in Antarctica. What are they going to do?
That's true.
The anesthesia would be minimal, including lidocaine, a topical numbing ointment, and ice as a backup. Lisa Beal, a computer technician, and Choo-Choo Charlie Kaminsky, a telescope expert, were able to set up a microscope and video recorder to magnify the stain and produce images clear enough that they could be sent off to labs in Denver and Washington.
Jerri was officially diagnosed with breast cancer via remote satellite communication with oncologists back in the United States. By this point, she had started hormone therapy called tamoxifen, which is administered intravenously, meaning injected into the veins to shrink the tumor. Shortly after, she began chemotherapy guided remotely by Dr. Kathy Miller and oncology staff at the Indiana University Cancer Center. Using video conferencing equipment, they walked Jerri through the process as she received several anti-cancer drugs, each delivered in separate saline bags and administered at carefully timed intervals.
The tumor shrank in size before growing again. When reflecting on her role as a doctor, she recalled an Irish tradition. At funerals, someone called a sin eater would consume food left on the body of the deceased to absorb their sins and help their soul reach heaven. Jerri realized that she was always absorbing the pain of others, and she needed them to now do the same for her. She describes thinking back on how the community rallied around her in support, saying, quote, "It was a freeing experience. I didn't think I would like it, but realizing how much people need each other, it frees you to need people, as amazing as that is."
I think right here is a good spot to also really highlight the people that we've talked about already. This welder and the carpentry foreman are doing exactly that. They're going out of their way to help her in a field that they're definitely not comfortable in because that's not their forte, but they're using whatever knowledge and skills that they have and they're bending it to make it so that they can be a valuable resource for her and her time of need. And I think that that is so important to see the community that is really coming around her.
Yeah, and everyone from them to the telescope operator and the computer specialist, like anyone with any sort of skill that could be integrated into this effort, they're willing to help. And it just reminds me, when she was reflecting back on, oh, it's nice to have support. I remember reading a book, it was a really long time ago, but I believe it was called Help for the Helper. And it was all about how important it is, especially for somebody who finds themselves in a role that you're primarily taking care of others, like doctors, or if you're in a caretaking position for maybe an ill family member, or you're always the point of contact that you're just the helper, whatever that means, and how important it is to ask for help that you so freely give to others, because hyper independence and doing everything yourself is great in some aspects, but you need people and you need support. And that really started to show itself for Jerri in this situation where there was no other option. Like she could only do so much.
And she couldn't do it alone either. She had to have this help. And when we're talking about she had to do these specifically timed intervals of chemotherapy, drugs, and she went as far as she wrote out guides and manuals in case she was too sick. She's undergoing this really intensive treatment now, and she does have to rely on other people. And then you can also tell in that where she's writing out how to handle medical emergencies. She's clearly still not only thinking about her own well-being, but everyone else. She's like, if I'm too sick to take care of someone who's having a heart attack or needs CPR, you need to know all of the things. And she's writing out the medical procedures on what they can do and highlighting important information. So even through everything she's going through, she's also actively thinking about her community that's around her.
Yeah. It's a nice exchange, and
yeah.
It also makes me think a little bit of just rally, like the community rallying behind you and feeling relieved by support that maybe you're not accustomed to. For me, what that kind of took place in 2022 when my partner passed away, Ian, and I am super independent and I love doing things for myself, and I usually have everything under control and I don't really ask for help much. And when that happened and I was living away from home, like on the opposite end of the country, I had just kind of moved there with him. So we had some sort of community, but it was kind of like my work friends that I had met, but we didn't have any like super solid family or friends there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that happened, I felt really alone because not only had I just lost the only person that I like really loved and cared about there, but I didn't really have that net of support that I would have had back here at home.
Right.
And I kept to myself for a while. I was like, I can do this. Like, I can just keep going. And very quickly, I realized I couldn't. And as soon as I allowed people to say, let me come help you, it was just this relief. I mean, you flew in for a week. My mom flew in for a week. My best friend Natea flew in for a week. Like, there was just this rotation of support, even if that meant just sitting on the couch and staring at the wall for 5 hours, or walking my dogs for me when I didn't have the energy to do that. Like, all these little things of realizing how vital support of community and friends and family are when you're going through something tough. It's really eye-opening, especially for somebody who feels like they just do everything themselves all the time and quote unquote don't need support. Like, you do. You're a person and you're human, and humans thrive on human connection.
Right. And it really all does stem back to that. It's like you can be independent all you want, but in times that are really, really hard, it always comes back to human connection. And honestly, not even times that are just really, really hard, but also times that are really great. You know, if you're celebrating something that's amazing in your life and you're alone, you're looking for that human connection too. You're looking for your friends, you're looking for your family, you're looking for whoever would also celebrate that with you and be excited for you. So I feel like it can go in both directions. Like, the worst time of your life, you need those people. And also in those really exciting times of your life, you also need those people.
Yeah, let people help you and let people celebrate you.
Yes.
Like, just let people be there for you.
Let people.
And she was like, great, well, I need everybody. So this is perfect.
So throughout this entire ordeal, Jerri stayed focused on survival, but she was fighting also against the altitude. After spending many months at the South Pole in extreme conditions, you become what is known as being toasted. This refers to the foggy mental state as a result of being hypoxic, meaning low oxygen, hypothermic, and sensory deprived. To cope, people at the station carried small green notebooks, nicknamed their green brains, to help them remember things. Due to the continuous darkness and all time zones meeting at the pole, the sense of time can also be lost. It is estimated that spending a full winter there could result in about 30% memory loss.
Not ideal conditions to be battling any sort of illness, I would say.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Heyday. Feeling stressed? Take a moment for yourself with Heyday. Stroll through rows of golden wheat, tend to cute barnyard animals, and discover the joys of a digital farm retreat. You don't have to hop in a car or catch a plane. Escape to the farm at the tap of a finger. With Heyday, you're not just tending to a farm, you're tending to yourself. Heyday. Search Heyday, that's Hay space DAY, in your favorite app store. Heyday is a free-to-play mobile game and offers optional in-app purchases and random rewards.
Vitamin Water was born in New York because New Yorkers wanted more. Like more flavor to go with all the flavor. A refreshing drink after climbing 6 flights of stairs to a walk-up apartment, or standing in the subway station in 100-degree heat. Focus when I have an 8-hour shift. And XXX after I was out all night at a club called XXX. Drink Vitamin Water. It's from New York.
I thought learning about being toasted was really interesting because I didn't really think about it. Because when you think about it, she's there in the winter. It's dark all the time. She's at these high elevations. And I didn't really think about having a foggy mind while you're there. That just didn't occur to me. But if she's there for months and months on end, and then they're talking about these green brains as their notebooks where they have to literally write down reminders to themselves to do everyday tasks, it's like, okay, but you're also treating yourself for cancer now, and you're also operating at this base now. So it's like, it's adding an extra layer to something that was already really hard. And now you're taking in cognitive dysfunction and bringing that into the mix too.
I mean, 30% memory loss is a big chunk.
If I had 30% memory loss right now, there would be a lot of issues in my life, I think.
Definitely. You wouldn't know about them, though, because you wouldn't remember.
I'd probably be thriving, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, because on the onset, it's like, okay, so it's going to be dark a lot and they're freezing. But actually, they're suffering from this foggy mental state. They can't remember anything. They have to write things down all the time. They're hypoxic and they're at altitude. You know, we know.
Altitude's hard.
You and I are very familiar, at least, with the dangers of being at altitude just from the stories we share on National Park After Dark and how that can really mess with people's decision-making skills, and just they're being put in scenarios where they're making decisions that they wouldn't typically make. And a lot of that has to do with the situation that they might be in, whether it be a survival situation or whatever, but also it's the altitude. It really messes with you, and it changes your line of thinking and how you process information and what you remember. So that all thrown into the mix is just, it's like, what else can they deal with here?
Right.
As Jerri was also going through chemotherapy, she was experiencing debilitating side effects. Dizzy spells, shortness of breath requiring additional oxygen, back pain, and eventually phlebitis, which causes inflammation in the veins, which made it increasingly more difficult for her to find hers during treatment. She attempted to stay positive and maintain a sense of normalcy. They even organized morale-boosting events like the Make Jerri Totally Bald party when her hair started to fall out.
That's really sweet. See, that's community. That's community. That is celebrating you and being there for you in your worst moment. But the reality of her circumstances remained as the elephant in the room. The weather conditions meant there were no flights in or out until spring, and the U.S. Antarctic program couldn't offer an immediate evacuation. She continued several rounds of chemotherapy. While it wasn't as consistent as it would have been in a hospital setting, the fact that she was able to administer her own care in such a remote, extreme environment was nothing short of incredible. I also imagine in these remote conditions, though, like she's giving herself these treatments, but just as two people who have been to Antarctica now, I also imagine that there was probably something really beautiful about stepping away after those treatments, seeing where you are. This was a dream. I can't imagine it was all extreme conditions and awfulness. I imagine that there were moments of like quiet and peace and wow, I'm in Antarctica. Under bad circumstances that I wasn't foreseeing, but there's also something really magical about this place that I'm in.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Her story continued to garner international attention, and a plan was put in place to rescue Jerri by the U.S. National Guard. As only certain aircraft could fly in these treacherous conditions, they had to rely on a C-141 transport plane, a large aircraft capable of landing on ice and snow. Even though the C-141 could handle the landing, they also had to coordinate a fuel drop at the South Pole for the plane, which required in-flight refueling by another aircraft. This refueling mission came from the Hawaii National Guard's Air Refueling Squadron. The logistics alone make this rescue operation truly remarkable. They needed everything to be perfect: the weather, the equipment, the in-flight refueling, and the exact timing. And even then, it was no guarantee. But eventually, after everything lined up, on October 16th, Jerri was flown from the South Pole to McMurdo Station, the larger U.S. research hub on Antarctica. From there, she was flown to New Zealand for emergency medical treatment. The mission marked one of the earliest landings at the South Pole ever recorded.
Once she arrived in New Zealand, she received continued medical treatment before returning to the U.S. At the Indiana University Cancer Center, she had a lumpectomy to remove the tumor and eventually a mastectomy, followed by chemotherapy and radiation treatments.
Her story is an incredible symbol of human effort, teamwork, and the lengths people will go to save a life.
After treatment, Jerri was officially declared cancer-free. After all that, can you imagine just that moment of she was in Antarctica. She doesn't know what's going to happen. She doesn't know how sick she's going to be. She doesn't know when she's going to get rescued. She finally is rescued. Now she's really undergoing her treatment in a professional way, in the way that it's meant to be done. And she's finally declared cancer-free.
I'm sure she did a lot of reflecting, especially on the people that helped her get there. And I mean, she did have concerns for a while of, as we mentioned, is this worth it? Is this worth the danger that I'm potentially putting other people in to get me various drops and transports, and asking a lot of people that aren't necessarily well versed in this profession, and everything came together for her in that moment. And she was finally, it's a big moment to be cancer free regardless of the journey up until that point, but hers was especially, I'm sure, worth celebrating.
I know. A moment of I survived.
Jerri remarried and wrote her memoir, Icebound, a doctor's incredible story of survival at the South Pole. She traveled the globe, speaking at events and meeting with people facing their own battles with cancer. Through it all, she remained positive and hopeful. In an interview, she said, quote, "Many people, when they have cancer, do change. And many have asked, would I have gotten cancer at the South Pole if I had a choice? Yes, because it is a profound experience that can change you and send you on a new pathway in life. And we often need obstructions so that we can make our life richer."
Unfortunately, in 2005, Jerri's cancer returned. It metastasized to her brain, liver, and bones. But true to who she was, Jerri kept moving forward, embracing life with courage, humor, and grace. She became a passionate advocate, using her voice and story to raise awareness and offer hope to others navigating cancer.
She passed away on June 23, 2009 in Southwick, Massachusetts at age 57. But her legacy remains. Jerri Nielsen's story is more than one of survival. It's about resilience, selflessness, and the extraordinary strength of the human spirit. While enduring unthinkable challenges, she inspired the world by meeting them with her heart and purpose.
Wow. What an incredible story. And she did a lot of really incredible things. And one thing that I thought was really amazing is you can go through a really debilitating illness, and your only job in that moment is to deal with it the best way that you can. And she went further than that, and she became an advocate, and she wanted to speak with other people and offer hope for other people who are in the same situation as her. And I just thought that that was a really beautiful way to make something. And again, there's no obligation to make something good out of something so terrible. But the fact that she did find that in herself to be able to do that, I just think is really beautiful.
Yeah, kind of a callback to the beginning when I was talking about one of my favorite authors, Nora McInerney. I love the quote that she says, "You are under no obligation to make lemonade out of lemons." Same type of thing. Like, you don't have to do good things or make something good out of something terrible that happens to you. It's allowed to just be bad. But she took it a step further and, like you said, really used her experience to help others. And I think for me, one of the biggest takeaways of her story is kind of just what she said at the end about when people ask her, would you have gone through this experience if you had a choice? And she says yes, because of what it did for her and how it changed her outlook on life. And even though it was what she described it as an obstacle, it's like, yes, I would say that was an obstacle for sure. It pivoted her outlook on life. And sometimes we need those obstacles in whatever form they come to make your life richer and give you a different perspective. And I love that, because while some people at the outset, from the outside looking in, for someone to say, yeah, I would go through that. Like, I accept that. I would do it again. You're kind of like, what?
Yeah.
But, personally, again, going through, I would have preferred Ian not pass away, of course, but his death really changed my life and really changed my perspective on life and how I live my life. So I can understand the root of what she's saying here. And I think that is really admirable, to take something so devastating and find any little pieces of good out of it and take that and run with it.
Yeah. And like she said, it gave her this whole new perspective of her life that maybe she wasn't viewing her life or had the appreciation for the life that she had until she had to look it in the face and look death in the face and say, maybe my time here is coming to an end. And maybe when she got that second opportunity, it was more of a, yes, I would go through this again because I saw that second opportunity and I took it. Whereas if I didn't go through this, I would have kept living my life the way that I was. And that wasn't beneficial for me.
It's all about perspective. And we kind of glazed over a little bit her before she got to Antarctica. She went through a lot with her husband. And
yes. She didn't have an easy life.
No.
She had a lot of obstacles and she went through a lot of different chapters in her life that were arguably equally as hard as other ones.
yeah, just in different ways.
For sure.
Yeah. And I know that you have her book
I do have her book.
sitting on your shelf. And I saw it at the bookstore the other day. I'm like,
It's a sign.
Jerri is amongst us
Yeah,
right now.
she hears us. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in this week. Thank you for tuning in to Watch Her Cook.
If you're looking to dive a little bit deeper into Dr. Jerri Nielsen's story, we've dropped some sources for you in the description. Let us know what incredible women's stories you'd like to hear next.
And a big shout out to Sick Bird Productions, who produces our podcast and helps bring these stories to life. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Watch Her Cook Podcast, leave a review, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Just a reminder, empowered women empower the world. Now let's go cook. See you next Wednesday.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.